tens of thousands of migrants arriving from Central and South America and West Africa, straining city resources.
Aware of those two locations because there were complaints that were filed. We went in and found that there were individuals living in unsafe conditions.
Those who commit serious crimes in the city, they should be able to be deported after they serve their time.
It's happening right here behind us. You can see police are inside one of the areas that was being used as a bedroom.
Those numerical minority that believe they could come to our city and get the benefits of the city.
Illegal busted shelters. In the course of 2 days, 2 illegal immigrant shelters in Queens and the Bronx that were hosting scores of individuals were busted. The announcement follows Mayor Eric Adams' repeated Tuesday plea to the White House to expedite the issuance of work permits for immigrants, stating, "You put 1,000 people in one place and tell them they can't work, all they can do is sit around all day, tempers flare." On Tuesday, it was discovered that more than 50 migrants were being held in an unsafe, overcrowded 2-story facility. In the cellar on the first floor of Sauer's Wholesale Furniture, located at 13203 Liberty Avenue in South Richmond Hill, authorities discovered 13 beds and 14 bunk beds crammed together. Ibu Sauer, the proprietor of the business, asserted that in addition to providing breakfast, lunch, and dinner, he was charging the locals $300 per month for a place to sleep, while also providing them with a place to sleep. It was said by him that as many as 70 people were staying there since they had exhausted all of the available space in the emergency shelter that the city had established for migrants, and they were unable to afford a place to live. Through the use of a cell phone, the interior of the building, which was packed with beds and people, was captured on camera. As a result of the large number of people who lived in the basement, it was stated that they had to sleep in turns. There were a great number of delivery bikes and items located in the back of the building. The individuals who were sleeping there were not provided with sufficient natural light, ventilation, or room, as stated by the inspectors. Even plumbing work that was not authorized and was done illegally was found by the authorities.
First, a furniture store in Queens was busted for housing migrants in a cramped basement, and a second building in the Bronx was raided yesterday.
Thousands of migrants that have made their way into this country have come to New York, putting a strain on some of the city's services.
Change. We're not going to let our people out there sleeping in the streets. It's wrong.
Time in as many days in 2 separate boroughs that authorities have uncovered these illegal migrant shelters.
Aware of those two locations because there were complaints that were filed. We went in and found that there were individuals living in unsafe conditions.
Those who commit serious crimes in the city, they should be able to be deported after they serve their time.
The Department of Buildings recently issued a total evacuation order for the first floor as well as the cellar. It was discovered on Wednesday that there is yet another refuge for unauthorized immigrants. Officials conducted a check of the building because officials discovered that it was illegally housing a number of individuals who were dangerously underage. A notice to vacate has been delivered by the New York City Department of Buildings to a business building located on East Kingsbridge Road in Fordham. The building is 2 stories tall. Our inspectors found that one of the commercial stores in the building had been illegally converted into sleeping quarters, with 34 beds on the first floor and 11 beds in the cellar tightly packed together, a spokesperson for the DOB disclosed to Fox 5 NY. In addition, extension wires, space heaters, hot plates, and electric bicycles were found by inspectors at the Bronx building, as reported by the Department of Buildings. The individual claimed to have stayed at the address for 2 months and to have paid the building owner $300 each month. Residents of both buildings are receiving assistance from the NYC Office of Emergency Management.
Calls to find a housing solution for migrants growing louder after city officials bust 2 illegal shelters this week.
Around in so many different sectors is how do we solve the problem? 177,000 migrants and asylum seekers.
It's happening right here behind us. You can see police are inside one of the areas that was being used as a bedroom.
And I continue to believe that as a former police officer. We have the job to apprehend those who commit crimes.
Not enough. Last month, Mayor Eric Adams appeared to have prevailed when the governor made a vow to provide $2.4 billion, which is more than twice the amount that was suggested the previous year, to assist with the costs of providing care for the tens of thousands of refugees who have arrived in New York in search of protection. The statement that Mr. Adams made, however, indicated that even that might not be adequate. During his speech before lawmakers at the state capitol in Albany, the mayor claimed that in order to prevent the city from making severe budget cuts, the state would have to pay for at least half of the expense of providing care for migrants. The amount that his staff assessed to be $4.6 billion was the amount that the state would have to pay that would be required. Mr. Adams made the following statement: "We are the economic engine of the state. In addition, we have consistently shown our support for the state. Now, we are reliant on the state to provide us with support in the city." The officials in New York had hoped that the federal government, state governments, and municipal governments would all shoulder an equal share of the costs associated with providing refuge for refugees.
I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City.
Prepared to face the consequences in the long run, he hopes this will push the city to do more.
And I think there's a clear way that we can solve this problem. Number one, we need a real decompression strategy.
Tens of thousands of migrants arriving from Central and South America and West Africa, straining city resources.
Think they're going to commit a crime in this city. That's not acceptable. And that is what we're seeing.
On the other hand, representatives from the federal government did not commit to that arrangement, which meant that the city had to request additional financing from the state. During his journey to Albany, which is known as Tin Cup Day and is an annual event in which local officials present their budget ideas to the state, the mayor met with legislative leaders and Governor Kathy Hochul. Additionally, the mayor advocated for increased support for migrants during his visit to Albany. In addition to this, he exerted pressure on legislators to grant the mayor authority over schools, the authority to deal with illegal cannabis vendors, and an increase in the city's capability to borrow money. 2021 was the year that New York declared the use of marijuana for recreational purposes legal. This was done with the objective of uplifting communities of color who had suffered disproportionately as a result of the war on drugs. Cannabis sales licenses, on the other hand, have been difficult to come by, while authorities sort through concerns pertaining to the law, ethics, and the economy. This has resulted in an increase in the number of dealers who are not permitted to sell cannabis. A month ago, during an interview with the editorial board of the Buffalo News, Ms. Hochul referred to the launch as a disaster and proposed regulations that would allow the state and localities to crack down on unlicensed merchants. She also put up suggestions for legislation that would allow it to be implemented. Despite the fact that Mr. Adams is in agreement with the notion, he believes that it has the potential to be broadened. This year, Mr. Adams was able to find an audience that was mostly understanding, which is a significant change from the usual nasty reception that Albany mayors receive. From both parties, he got appreciation for various aspects of his management of the migrant crisis.
We're following that breaking news. Authorities raiding another illegal migrant housing setup.
Helping ourselves because they're not helping us. I mean, putting the guys out there in the streets.
Those numerical minority that believe they could come to our city and get the benefits of the city.
And as we would with any New Yorker that we find living in an unsafe condition, we immediately vacated those locations.
This was the case, despite the fact that there were partisan divisions regarding the wider answers to the problem. Mr. Adams was undoubtedly pleased with the cordial welcome, as his popularity had declined due to federal and municipal probes into his fundraising activities and those connected to the mayor. 70 individuals connected to the New York City Housing Authority were indicted earlier today as a result of a separate federal investigation, which Justice Department representatives have referred to as one of the worst public corruption cases in history. Former state senator Mr. Adams has presented his record in Albany as mainly successful, pointing to red light camera approval, a good agreement on funding for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and 2 changes to the state's bail laws as examples of his close ties to the legislature. However, a number of Democratic lawmakers were incensed by Mr. Adams' decision to openly and persistently advocate for modifications to the state's bail reform laws. They perceived his position as undermining the party's efforts in the criminal justice system and providing political fodder to Republicans who blamed the law for an increase in violence during the pandemic. Furthermore, even though Mr. Adams eventually succeeded in getting state law changed to permit judges to imprison more suspects pending trial, he was unable to convince legislators to give him 4 years as mayor of the city schools. Rather, Mr. Adams was granted only 2 years, provided that he reduced the number of students in each class. This year, Ms. Hochul is supporting the mayor's request, which is to have 4 years of control over the schools. Nevertheless, a few legislators expressed disapproval of the mayor's authority over schools altogether, arguing that a different kind of administration may work better. Others questioned the mayor's decision to allocate the city's current budget, pointing out the reductions made to sanitation and libraries. Senator Brad Hoylman-Sigal, a Democrat from Manhattan's West Side, once said to the mayor, "If you do get this $2.4 billion, that's a pretty big tin cup." He was alluding to the governor's proposal. Do you guarantee that all of the cuts will be made again? Mr. Adams brushed off the inquiry, restating his belief that $2.4 billion would not be sufficient. "We require more," he declared. Later, Queens Democrat Senator John C. Liu questioned the mayor's priorities during a discussion over the request to raise the city's borrowing limit. So which will be prioritized, the jails or the schools? The senator questioned Jacques Jiha, the city's finance director. Mr. Jiha said that was an excellent question and laughed. Mr. Liu pushed, saying, "Say schools quickly before I run out of time." "There are 3 main," Mr. Jiha got started first. Liu interrupted him. "The wrong response," he said. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.